Good evening. Thank you everyone for coming. The Hoover Board of Education meeting is now called to order. If you choose, please join me in a silent prayer, and please remember Sergeant Brian Foreman, who's recovering at home and should be back at work as soon as possible. We miss him, so please put him in your prayers. Thank you. If you would, please rise and pledge allegiance. Salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome a new board member, Amy Madonna, and we are honored to have Judge Davis here to give the oath to Ms. Madonna. Thank you for coming, Judge.
Right.
I don't think we've had a judge here before.
Is that right?
Okay.
Come on up.
There you go.
I've opted for the shorter version of this. And so if you would raise your right hand, repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Amy Madonna,
Solemnly swear
that
I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Alabama,
and the Constitution of the State of Alabama,
so long as I continue
so long as I continue
a citizen thereof, and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and honestly
and honestly
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
as a member of the Hoover School Board,
as a member of the Hoover School Board,
which I'm about to enter,
which I'm about to enter,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge Gaines. It was a privilege to have you here, and I hope you
May I
feel
be
at home.
excused?
Ms. White, if you'll call the roll, so we'll establish.
Deanna Vaughn.
Here.
Craig Helen.
Here.
Carmen Kendrick.
Here.
Amy Madonna.
Here.
Amy Thompson.
Here.
Quorum has been established. You have before you the agenda for today's board meeting. Do you have a motion to adopt the agenda? Or a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll now go to the our recognition time, which is all of our favorite time of our meetings. Mr. Gasson, if you don't mind.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. Tonight we have one very special proclamation regarding our own Hoover City Schools Foundation, and specifically Ms. Janet Turner, the current executive director of the foundation, and we will recognize one of our instructional leaders in conjunction with this. Let me read the proclamation. Whereas the Hoover City Schools Foundation was formed in 1992 in order to further support the school system's commitment to excellence, and whereas the continued efforts of the foundation's board and its executive director, Ms. Janet Turner, have helped thousands of Hoover students, and whereas the foundation began its Seed Lab initiative in 2017-18 under the direction of Ms. Turner, with guidance from Hoover educators in order to fund teacher-driven initiatives designed to solve real-world classroom issues, and whereas the foundation's Seed Lab was well received by Hoover City Schools and resulted in new attention to various areas ranging from homework help to growth mindsets. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Hoover Board of Education recognizes the commitment to educational excellence exhibited by Ms. Janet Turner and the Hoover City Schools Foundation on this, the 5th day of June, 2018. Congratulations, Ms. Turner, if you'd come up. And we'll have her stand here for just a second. She gave us this nifty Seed Lab t-shirt. That's their newest thing that actually started last school year. They funded their first wave of group level teacher team projects, and those are on our website homepage if you'd like to see them. At the last school board meeting, they announced the second wave, And the funding total for that was somewhere in the range of 15?
Last year we funded 15,000.
Wow. So all of that going directly to the classrooms, a lot of benefit to our students across the school district. Ms. Kelly Lane is in the audience, our instructional technology leader. I believe I've got that title correct. And she's been in tandem with Ms. Turner.
It's her brainchild.
So she has kind of helped guide Janet, and you guys have really taken off planting the seed, to use the analogy there. But it's well received by the teachers, very competitive, and I think it takes quite the time to cull through those applications, correct?
It does.
Well, we appreciate your service to Hoover City Schools. Let's congratulate her once again. And Mr. Kelly, at this time I'll turn it over to Superintendent Dr. Murphy for additional recognitions.
Please let me also thank Janet and Kelly for your work on this terrific project. It is being well received and certainly beneficial to our students, so thank you for that. I'd like to have the privilege to just acknowledge a few additional things that's arrived to me after we put recognitions together. I'm exceptionally proud of 4 of our principals who have just been selected by Council for Leaders in Alabama Schools to be a part of the Certificated Instruction Leadership Cohort for 2018-19. These particular individuals are going to complete some very rigorous coursework. They're going to do in-field experiences. They'll provide some evidence of systemic job-embedded projects, and they're going to need to implement some tasks to demonstrate their competencies in order to get what's called a CIL certification, Council of Instructional Leaders. And those 4 principals are, and some of them are here, so if you'll stand, Dr. Terry Lamar, Bluff Park, congratulations. Dr. Chris Robbins. Robbins at Berry Middle School. Dr. Alice Turney at River Chase. And Mrs. Melissa Hatter, who's our assistant principal at Spain Park. So thank you for the initiative. We look forward to your bringing some of those good projects back and helping us with the work in the district. I'd also like to share with you board members, for the first time in the history of our school district, which you know we're upcoming the 30th year anniversary for us. For the first time, more than half of our seniors in both of our respective high schools have received scholarship monies. So for Hoover High School, 52.8% of those seniors received scholarship money, and at Spain Park, 51.1%. This is a benchmark we've been wanting to break, getting half or more than half of our students getting scholarship monies, and so that's a laudable mark for us in time, and we're exceptionally pleased and proud of that. I would also like to share with you that 89% of our seniors this year were accepted by one of their top 3 choices for colleges. And so again, that's a good mark for us in terms of our successes. We've just received our scores from the cursive writing test, which we do. That is a 3rd grade test. As many people would suggest, cursive writing is a bygone ability for so many people, but there is a 3rd grade assessment, and I want to acknowledge River Chase for, I believe Greystone. I'm sorry, let me look at my notes. Greystone for being at 100%. Stacy Stotts, would you stand up? And 100%, and all of our schools did exceptionally well, so I want all of the elementary principals, if you would stand. They all did exceptionally well, and so lots of them in the back, and thank you so much. Cursive writing is important. This is a benchmark that the state looks at, and we're just pleased to be able to acknowledge that. And then lastly, my last request for point of privilege is to acknowledge the Phoenix. This is a terrific book that is put together every year at Berry Middle School that's contained in this. There's also digital photography, paintings, pencil drawings, watercolor. I just want to acknowledge this magazine and the work of the students at Berry Middle School, this is their 21st edition, so for 21 years, they've published annually this document. And this is a great opportunity for our students to express themselves artistically. They're very proud of this, and I'm very proud of this. I'm proud of their work, and this just arrived on my desk today, so it seemed also a good day to share that with you, and we can certainly make that available to you. But thank you for that point of privilege to add a few late recognitions to the agenda.
Sure. I wanted to say a little more about Kelly Lang and the job she's done, especially with the seat. Please stand up. Thank you.
Stand up.
I can say that, I'll remember that.
The job you did with Janet was way beyond your employee duties, and we recognize that. It takes a lot of passion to do what you did, and it's much appreciated.
Absolutely.
Okay, is there any other recognition? Okay, good. Last, we have any public participation tonight. I'll remind you that we do have somewhat of a time limit on this. Try to keep it 3 minutes or less. Please keep your comments in the form of good name and character. That includes our school district, that includes individuals. To keep this in good taste, we're more than happy to offer public participation. We think that's your right for us to hear from you. Go ahead and answer questions. If we can't do it here, we'll refer to Dr. Murphy, or we'll do our best to answer. Do we have anyone that would like to speak tonight? Okay. Good. I would like to recognize someone, Ms. Jane Williams. Would you raise your hand? She's, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't say mentor. One of the attorneys with AESB is extremely sharp on school law. Will tell you this, she's my rock star in Montgomery. Don't have privileged communication, but I can call Jane, I can ask her something. And she's the source of the pipeline that we get, which interprets the new codes written in the legislature, tells us what we must do to get in compliance, and tells us again. So thank you for coming. Jane's here to offer some information for us after the meeting, and thank you so much. Glad you got here safe. Thank you. You have the minutes from the regular board meeting of May 8th, 2018, and special call meeting of May 23rd, 2018. Do you have a motion? Dr. Murphy, do you want to?
Yes, board members, I recommend that you accept both the May 8th regular board meeting, and we had a special call board meeting May 23rd. My recommendation is that you accept both.
Do you have a motion to accept both minutes?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Next item on the agenda will be personnel actions. Dr. Murphy.
You have before you our personnel report. We have 20 appointments on this document. You have 4 transfers, 2 change of status requests. There are 5 requests for leave of absence. There are 6 resignations, 4 retirements with 112 years of service with those 4. You have 2 bus liability requests, and I would like to acknowledge that Julie Feltham, our principal at Shades Mountain, is retiring at the end of August with 38.5 years, and Julie's not with us, but we appreciate her service and leadership to our school district. I recommend board members that you accept the personnel report and thank the HR department for doing such terrific work.
Do I have a motion to accept superintendent's recommendation of personnel actions?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions from the board? Or any from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Dr. Murphy, we've got a job description for Assistant Director of Payroll and Benefits before us. Do you mind telling us about that?
Yes, we have had an assistant director for payroll and benefits in the past. As we've tried to be thoughtful about finances, we have not filled that position. It has not been filled since we moved our friend Steve Marshall from that position, I believe, Steve, to his current position. But as we continue to look at the work and the obligations and responsibilities on the department, we wanted to come back, make a revisit of the job description. We have vetted this with Melissa McKee, the attorney who works with us on this. So what you have before you is a request for you to approve the Assistant Director for Payroll Benefits job description. And in all likelihood, we'll be following that up, coming forward with a request to fill this position. At this time, the request is merely to approve the job description.
Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for approval of job description for assistant director of payroll and benefits? Second.
Second.
All in favor? Passes.
So I'll just come quickly now and say we'd like to fill this position. We are likely to post this position. Board members, let me remind you that we can post positions we do not fill. We cannot fill positions we do not post. So we would like to get this position posted, and certainly the pleasure of the board as we move forward in terms of your accepting of that. So thank you.
Would you review the business actions, Dr. Murphy?
I'd like to call on Tina. Tina, if you would, our request will be for you to approve our monthly financial statement for April 2018, our cash disbursements for April 2018, and also our payroll for May 2018. Tina, would you share with us?
Board, you have before you the financial statements and bank reconciliations as of April 30, 2018. 74% of budget revenue has been received for these past 7 months of our fiscal year. The result is an increase to revenue of $2.3 million due to an increase in tax receipts. The operating budget represents 7 months of activity for FY18, and 59% of the budget would be anticipated to have been spent at this time. General fund expenditures are 57.8% of budget and $809,000 more than the month of April FY17. This is due to the technology refresh cycle, new time and attendance software, River Chase Center architectural fees, Brock's Gap awning, and transportation security cameras. General fund expenses year to date are $5.2 million more than the April period of FY17 as a result of the purchase of River Chase Center, Hoover High Band Room, Greystone Playground, and the high school's turf and track projects. Special revenue fund expenses were $3.3 million or 67.5% of budget. Special revenue expenditures are $694,000 year to date more than April FY17 due to CMP purchased food. We've had an increase in participation, but we've also had an increase in revenue to offset that purchased food. Local school and district-wide supplies and staff development. And board, the cash disbursements for April were $4,414,172. Payroll for May 2018 was $7,514,865.48.
I recommend your approval of those three items, monthly financials, cash disbursements, and payroll.
Do you have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for the approval of all business actions?
So moved.
The second.
Second.
All in favor? Dr. Murphy, would you explain the bid that we have before us now for Hoover High School concession bid?
We do have bid 2018-07 in front of you, a request for us to accept the qualifying bid from Coca-Cola United for Hoover High School's concession and vending. Coca-Cola was the sole bidder on this project, and you do see the outline in terms of the support for scoreboard value, the event product allocation, the concession equipment allocation, the signage allocation, and exclusivity funding allocation. I do recommend your approval of bid 2018-07, and will acknowledge that Spain Park High School has already, I believe last year, and I see Mr. G, his has already been taken care of. They're just on a different cycle of when the contract ends. So we're doing a much better job of getting these moving and before you, and so I ask your approval of this one tonight.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for bid number 2018-07 concession vending? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions from the board? Any from the public? I will say that Coca-Cola's always been a partner. When I was on the park board, they sponsored most of the parks here. It's my assumption, I could be corrected, we're dealing directly with a vendor here. In some cases, some of the other concessions, you're going through distribution. So I think the fact that we've got people in the community that are high up with Coca-Cola, we appreciate their participation and what they do here. All in favor? Dr. Murphy, next action will be consider the 2018-19 Board of Education meeting schedule. I believe you've got a schedule for us to look at.
Yes, this is our annual date for taking a look at all of our upcoming meetings that would start with July 2018 and carry us through this time next year, which would be our June 11th, 2019 meeting. You have all those dates before you. I think we shared those with you with adequate time to review your calendars. I would recommend your approval of that at this time.
Do you have a motion to approve the board meeting schedule of 2018-2019 as recommended by the superintendent?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? I've had a couple of stakeholders reach out as sometimes we tried, I think Ms. Frazier years ago, tried to schedule our meetings away from the council meetings. All the government functions are important to us, so where possible, we changed ours to Tuesday so that the public and we also could attend the council meetings where possible. Where you see that changed is most cases, the superintendent is involved, thankfully, with very many organizations that support us with knowledge coming back here. So that's generally where you see a change. In most cases, we won't change the date if one board member is missing. It has been done, but I appreciate your consideration as to why that's done. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Dr. Brooke, we got a policy addition regarding reasonable suspicion, drug testing for all employees. It's before the board. Would you explain that to me?
We currently have a reasonable suspicion for safety-sensitive employees already in place in our policy manual. Dr. Tara Simmons has worked on this along with our attorneys. I believe that AEA and our committee has had opportunity to review this. What's different about what you have in front of you is this is for reasonable suspicion drug testing for all board employees, not just those employees that are in safety-sensitive positions, such as driving a bus. So this allows us to be able, with reasonable suspicion, to drug test any employee who presents with characteristics or actions or smells that would suggest to us that they may have compromised themselves with drug, alcohol, or otherwise. I believe that you've had this with some time to review and would ask your approval of that this evening.
I do have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for approval of the new policy addition.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? I do have a question. Fourth Amendment, I mean, if it's a bus driver, an employee off of campus, I'm assuming our policy, we're not violating. What if they refuse testing?
You mean
They don't
while
have
they're
this-
on duty? If they refuse testing, that'll be deemed a violation of the policy in and of itself, and they would be subject to disciplinary action for that.
So it's not the same powers you would have as a police officer, but it's basically they're required by this to submit to the test. If they refuse to, then
It's just a failure to follow the board's policy, that's correct. One of the keys is obviously training for those who are observing employees, and I know that Dr. Murphy has a plan for that as well, so.
Any more questions? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? New policy passes. Dr. Murphy, we've got some considerations on student drug testing and some company proposals. Would you review those?
Again, Dr. Simmons, thank you for the work in student drug testing. She has presented to us tonight some proposals. My recommendation to you is that we approve company ESS, the cost per student for drug testing, $34.50. The cost for the parent for a follow-up test, if there is a positive result, would also be $34.50. The parent paying that directly to ESS for any follow-ups that they might want to do. I would just remind us that we do drug testing on two levels. One, for any students that drive on our campuses, and also at random, and also random drug testing of any of our athletes. And certainly should we have calls, again, as a board, we can have reasonable calls. Police have to have probable calls, so we're at a little different level on that. But we can test based on that, but it is, this process is a random selection process. Would also just add to the conversation that we are now charging $50. Dr. Simmons shared this with you, $50 for a parking permit at our respective high schools. $25 of that is going toward the support of the drug testing. We reached out and surveyed, Dr. Simmons did, to ask our parents how they felt about that. She shared with you last board meeting, I believe, that our parents are very supportive of that. It came with a little angst in the beginning because it felt like a hefty price to pay to park a vehicle on our campus, but I think our parents are seeing the value of the drug testing, the opportunity to do follow-up drug testing if they feel the need to do that. And so I think it's a benefit, and we're not meeting the same level of resistance for the fee. So that was a little more you needed to know, but my recommendation to you is ESS. Approve them, please, for student drug testing.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for approval of the proposed company to administer drug testing, which is ESS?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any questions from the board on this? Yes, Ms. Tyson.
No, I'm sorry. We're all doing everything so fast, so I decided not to say anything now.
Okay, second.
Any questions from the public?
I'm sorry, I would like to recognize Mr. Ken Wade, who
Okay.
is with ESS as
Very good.
witness tonight.
Would you stand up?
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for
We may
coming.
have questions for you. Stay standing.
So I do have one question. So the follow-up that the parent can choose to do if they wish, that's correct, yes?
They have to.
They
So
have
if the
to. That
student tests positive,
Then the
then
parent
within a
must.
certain number of days, the
Okay.
parent must follow up, and the student does not gain privileges to drive until they have a negative, and they have to go to ESS for that test, and it's a swab test, but they're able to go to the office on Valleydale, and they take the test in the office, and then they have the results.
So the $34.50 for the parent cost, is that a discounted rate? If the parent went out and did their own, I'm just curious.
Yes.
I figured it.
And you can see that by some of the other
Exactly.
bids that came in, that was a very good price to allow parents to be able to come behind that with the test. Thank you for the clarification.
More questions? Any from the public? Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for approval of the proposed company to administer, I've already gone through this. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Sorry, I thought you knew. Okay, it is approved.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is an emergency exemption for stabilization work at Gwynn Elementary School, Golden Foundation.
We do have a foundational issue at Gwynn Elementary School. This is something, and I have Tracy here and David Mugg, thank you for your work on this. We've been watching this for a couple of years. We have actually built the money into our budget because we knew there was an issue that was going to need our attention soon. So in the infinite wisdom of Tracy, we put that in the budget, and of Tina. Alabama Code 41-16-23 does allow the board to act on a matter that we believe is an emergency. And it does save us some steps in this process. We really are at a point where we feel like this work needs to be done this summer. It's obviously something that's best done when students are not in the building. And we would like to declare this an emergency. We have reached out to Perry Taylor, others from the State Department. We may do this. It is in compliance with what would be in order for us to declare this emergency. Tracy can certainly answer additional questions, but my recommendation to you this evening is that we approve this Gwynn work as a matter of an emergency, and that we declare it as such for purposes of beginning the work immediately.
Do I have a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation for approval of an emergency exemption for stabilization work at Gwynn Elementary School? So a second?
Second.
Any questions from the board?
Question, is this work that anticipated would be done before school started?
Yes,
Okay.
we hope to have it complete before schools.
And there are actually two areas. We were aware of one area And as you all have continued your review, there's a second area. And our best estimate, based on the review of the architectural team, is hopefully not to exceed $150,000 for both areas, is my understanding.
What about, does this meet the qualifications for our insurance to take care of this?
The deductible's $150,000. We can certainly look at that. We wanna take any advantage of that we can, we pay for it. Yeah, we'll look at that. Thank you for the question.
Good question. Any more questions, public? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And this passes. Thank you, Dr. Burke. We'll enter the information report segment now. I'd like to begin with Ms. Hancock, discussing salary schedule committee that has come about. You'll see on this that Ms. Bowman and myself, we're not on the committee, we're there observing, so that when things like this come forward in this kind of detail, and this is many, many pages of spreadsheets, that at least two of your board, cannot be three, but two of your board is there just for information purposes only. It is illegal for us to be there because it's not a committee forum from the board going out to come back for a considered vote. We're there for information only. So when you see us on there, we're there to try to get good information back to the board. Thank you.
Yes, board, before you, we're just gonna give an update on the salary schedule committee. We commenced in May, we've already had 2 meetings. You will see our committee members, we have tried to pull from every area, the salary schedules that we see many variances and discrepancies among are the support personnel salary schedules, so that's what we're focusing on here. We have 20 people on this committee. As you can see, it's a very large committee, but we have pulled from all the support areas: HR, payroll, finance, child nutrition, operations, transportation, and the local schools. So as I mentioned, we are reviewing the support salary schedules. We also see a high turnover in a lot of these areas, so we wanted to look at these and see what might be some issues, and we're just comparing with other systems and other areas, as well as not just salary, but some of the other benefits as well. So our goal is to develop a fair and competitive salary schedule to attract and retain quality employees, reflect our employees' expertise, knowledge, or education. We want to reflect personal standards and requirements of the position with consideration to professional liability in their position, and boost employee morale. Some of the considerations that we are looking at and will continue to look at are salaries and benefits competitive with other districts, benefits comparable with Hoover City Schools teachers, no negative salary impact for a promotion, eliminate unnecessary schedules, create needed schedules, increase years of service from 10 and 12 years, where most of our salary schedules top out at, to all the way up to a step 27. Now that doesn't mean a step every year, but adding categories there. Increase personal days for classified employees from 2 to 5, which is an additional 3 days, which will be charged to a classified employee at $61 per day. Those are considered personal days with deduction. Minimize additional costs to district with overtime, absences, loss of investment in employee, which will be training and professional development that we, as we bring in new employees and then they leave us once they are trained, and to shore up existing salary and benefit discrepancies. With our work, we have also, we will be recommending in the July board meeting that all directors and coordinators receive 15 vacation days per year to be voted on at the July board meeting. 7 of our 18 directors and coordinators currently receive only 10. So we're trying to make that more equitable. We also will be recommending at the July board meeting, as mentioned just a minute ago, the increase of personal days from 2 to 5 for classified employees. The 3 additional days will be personal leave with deduction from the employee's pay. And certified employees already receive the 5 days.
We will bring to you a recommendation for those 2 areas. I would like to just talk in general for just a moment in time. What we're really trying to do is we're looking at certificated and non-certificated. Right now, the focus seems to be a bit more, this particular work, on our classified or non-certificated employees. This is a terrific school district, and we pay well. If you looked at some of the recent information that was sent out, we are the second highest paying for teachers in the state. But one thing that we are finding is that we have to continue to be competitive in order to maintain good teachers and also to maintain other classified or non-certificated individuals. We have some discrepancies that exist. A discrepancy that's just been pointed out is that we have some directors in our school district who receive 10 vacation days and other directors or coordinators in our school district that receive 15. And it's very hard for me as your superintendent to justify how one employee is meritorious of 15 but another is not and only gets 10. And so I think part of our work is that we're trying to find as much parity and support of our employees as we can. I do want you to know that we're looking at all parts and pieces of certificated and non-certificated, because to the extent we can reasonably continue to support and find ways to encourage people to stay on board with us, we certainly want to do that. We have other ideas that we'll be bringing forward to you. It is my role as your superintendent to advocate in a reasonable fashion for all employees in our school district for pay increases or for stipends or supplements, for vacation or other privileges that we might be able to extend to them that is fair to them but also fair to the board and to the school district. So I want to thank you for allowing us to bring to you some recommendations. We'll respect if the answer ends up out there somewhere being no, but we're just going to be advocates for all of our employees, and we're going to be asking for your support, and we'll not ask anything frivolous or that we can't sustain, because we are looking forward. We're not just looking at what can we do this year, but we're looking at, we realize any decisions we're making about salaries have to be sustained over time. For example, the pay increase that our legislators just issued to us that will begin October 1 will cost our school district about $2 million. That's not $2 million just for school year 18-19. That's perpetual. That continues with us. And so we realize when we're talking money in ways that we can support our people that it's a long-term commitment. One of the things I'd like to re-emphasize is that sometimes maybe people don't think we're supporting our teachers. We really are, because I just shared with you that it's costing this school board $2 million to carry that 2.5% pay increase. Our school district pays over the minimum salary schedule, and because we pay over the minimum salary schedule, local school district money, you as a board, as a school district, we're putting substantial money into that pay raise because we're not saying to our employees, by the way, we're only going to give you a 2.5% pay increase on the minimum salary schedule. We're saying we're going to give you a 2.5% pay increase on Hoover City Schools' salary schedule, and because it's over, then we are adding and continuing to support our teachers. And so I did want to share that with you. We will be continuing to look at teachers and our classified employees and looking for all the ways that we can keep good people, retain them, support them, nurture them, and just make sure that we've got the very best support systems in place for those. And Tina's work and that of her committee is really good. Thank you.
It is, and Dr. Murphy just said it, I'll say it again. This is just a starting point, but we're going to look at every employee that works here, see what's fair. Some of this is not going to really cost us any money, or not much. When you're talking about the vacation, the 2 to 5 days that you'll see, it actually may a very minimal increase in cost, but it's valuable to the employee to get those extra days. If they choose not to take them, then those days accumulate at the end of the day when they go into their retirement, which just doesn't cost us anything to do so. So all of this is not going to be considered and put on a July vote. That's why we're spending the time to try to understand what's here and to be fair to the employees. I call it longevity pay, I guess. When you go, we cap out at 10 years on most of these positions. So we know we're losing some employees, and when they get to the 11th year, I know the school district's giving them 11 through 27 years, and some years a graduated pay increase. So all of that is important. I just want everyone to know we're taking the time to make sure we understand where you are. We've got to stay competitive, and we've got to keep our employees. One of our leaders the other day said we train the best employees in the state. If they come here and they find something better, we lose them. And Earl, Mr. Cooper said that many times. We not only be the training grounds, we want to have employees that retire here. So thank you for the hard work.
Dr. Simmons, 2018-19 Code of Conduct. We want to share some information with you about our Code of Conduct and some work that we are doing with positive behavior supports from the University of Alabama. And also, we're going to talk a little bit about attendance, which is going to need to change as it relates to the number of excused days. So, Dr. Simmons.
We had a committee that looked at the student code of conduct, composed of 20 members. The committee ranged from elementary, middle, high school. We had teachers, administrators, counselors, and students, 3 students that served on the committee. This was under the direction of our discipline consultant, Dr. Sarah McDaniel, who would be here tonight, but she's presenting in Savannah at a PBIS conference. The next slide. So I'll go over a few of the major highlights that are proposed in the Student Code of Conduct for 18-19. Class 1 violations will be classroom managed. And so teachers will be provided with the skills that they need during the PBIS summer training to handle Class 1 violations. Of the 17-18 school year, 37% of our office referrals were Class 1. And some things that teachers will be trained on for consequences for Class 1 violations. And these are minor offenses such as unexcused tardies or behavior involving verbal disrespect, inappropriate display of affection is specified in your student code of conduct. But the teacher can redirect and give a verbal warning, have a parent conference, or a student conference. However, if you, on the next slide, repeated Class 1 violations can result in a Class 2 violation. And that would be a 2.25 multiple or continuous Class 1 offenses. So for K through 5, once they receive 7 Class 1 offenses, and there'll be documentation that will that we will discuss in the PBIS training this summer, how we'll maintain that documentation. But that can result in a Class 2 violation. After 25 consecutive days, if a K through 5 student does not receive any additional Class 1 offenses, then it's reset. So the student, it goes back to 0. Now for grades 6 through 8, students that received 6 Class 1 offenses then can receive a Class 2 office referral. And that's for 9 consecutive weeks. And then at the end of 9 weeks, if the student has not received any Class 1 offenses, then the student receives a reset. For 9 through 12, high school is 4 Class 1 offenses within a semester. The next slide. We have not specified the placement in alternative school in the Code of Conduct, although this has been the practice that we followed. So that will now be specified. First offense would be 45-day placement. Second offense would be 90-day placement. And third offense would be 180-day placement. With dress code, the committee discussed that it's the appropriateness of the clothing rather than the items of the clothing. Thus, number 2 has been omitted, which clothing that is too tight, that exposes the bust line, the sides, the back, the midriff area would be prohibited. So, thus number 3 was omitted because that would be covered in number 2 on whether or not the outfit is appropriate. GoFundMe has been added, that students may not use GoFundMe to raise money for a school fundraiser. And the next slide, it was added that summer use of technology is a privilege and could be revoked for inappropriate use. And also, as far as a disposition for an offense, it's added that limit access to, or that we can revoke technology for inappropriate use. While Mr. Bob Lowry is coming to talk about the attendance policy, I'd also like to recognize Student Services for their work that they've done on the transfer application, just so that the public knows the transfer application is available online, and we are accepting applications through June the 18th. If you have any questions, call Student Services, but they've done a wonderful job, Mr. Wayne Smith, Mr. Bob Lowry, and Ms. Lisa Yancey, on getting all of that together. Yes.
One question. As we look at where we are with obtaining unitary status, our new student code of conduct, do you think this puts us in a position where we can sort of correct the disproportionality that currently exists with discipline and following our code of conduct?
It's our start. So we will continue to make changes to the student code of conduct. We're making changes this year, but then we'll continue to work throughout this upcoming year with our discipline consultant to make additional changes. So one of the starts is a PBIS training so that teachers have the tools. So with teachers handling class 1 offenses, that will reduce our discipline by 37% this year on the number of office referrals, if you look at this year's data. So we're on the right track. So,
And if I may add to that, we do know that we will be at the table with DOJ and LDF, that this is sort of a first blush look at this. There was an expectation, and well embraced by the school district, for us from the court to get some support with disproportionality and discipline. So it is, as Tara said, the positive behavior support consultant is assisting us with that. Absolute, just the first step in this process. We expect that we'll have some significant rewrites of our code of conduct with time, and probably next year this time it'll be a very different code of conduct with a lot of additional input from DOJ, LDF, to help us address the disproportionality in great fashion. I want to be real clear. Nobody's talking about letting children get by with things that aren't acceptable to us. We are always going to be people who hold our children to high expectations. We're not talking about that. We're talking about any unfairness which may exist in terms of how children are addressed. And the very first step is we have to address the class 1 offenses that can and should be handled by the classroom teacher. And I get it, I've taught, so I'd rather teach than have to deal with discipline, but I can't send all those who are distracting out of my room first time around. I need to find some ways that I can manage that classroom. I can't teach if I can't manage, and we'll be working with our teachers and supporting them and finding ways not to send all those class 1. They're important, they're distracting, but we can't send all that to the office. And there's where a lot of disproportionality is, and that's where we're going to start.
Thank you.
Yes.
I love the reset.
Get to try it again.
Absolutely. People make mistakes.
There are
Children make more mistakes. We all make mistakes. So I love the reset. I do have one question on the technology piece, computer access summer. So my question is, taking the Chromebook, going home, and in your home's Wi-Fi, is there any restrictions still on this Chromebook?
If they're still SEPA compliant,
Okay,
still filter it every day.
very good. Thank you.
I have a question too, sorry. The GoFundMe part, is it GoFundMe or anything like that thereof?
Yes.
Okay, so
that could
any,
be added, or
That should be added.
That's
That's a
very
great
common.
point.
so it's all of those,
Any of the social
crowdfunding.
crowdfunding.
okay.
Crowdfunding, yeah, that's a better term. Yeah, thank you, that's a good point.
On that, is there I just have heard that, is there something like that is approved for school funding for requesting school, there was a company, this was,
Snap rice.
yeah,
That was one of.
that's, there is a
Snap
company
rice.
similar to that, that
You know,
I
our
need some
preference,
clarification on that.
our preference would be if this is a school event, a school fundraiser, that should be under an adult making
Right.
those reach outs to us or to their principals, or maybe they do, we have some guidelines for crowdfunding. We just do not need every child out there setting up a GoFundMe or a crowdfunding account, sometimes misrepresenting that it's a school project or a school fundraiser, and people making donations to that, and then we're encumbering a little bit of responsibility for that process. So we're trying to get our students out of the crowdfunding, allow us to try to support them unless they, you know, their parents support them in washing cars for a project, but that's not who we are. We don't need our children out doing that.
As we move forward with the consultant, will there be different committees organized, or this one committee, will they be the one that sort of sits and meet and talk about the different aspects of our code of conduct?
There'll be a different committee that's, but we'll have representation from elementary, middle, and high school level, and parent representation too. Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Lowry?
Jason was kind enough to share the remote. You know how those guys are, we have to hold the remote away. Last time I was before you, we talked about truancy, and so today we're going to talk a little bit about attendance. I get all the fun topics. What my goal is I would like to paint a picture for you as far as why we need to revisit our attendance policy and why you have a recommendation about this. About 2 years ago, we started talking about chronic absenteeism in the state. Chronic absenteeism at that time was defined by any student missing 10% of school days. For us, that was 18. We'll recap. We have 9 parent notes per semester, which 9 and 9 is 18. So when we look at what is defined as a missing day, it's an excused absence, it's a doctor's note, it can be hospitalization, it can be prearranged, it can be out of school suspension. Loosely equated, anytime the student is not at school, that calculates into the chronic absenteeism. So excused, unexcused really has no relevance in here. The exception that sometimes people get caught up on is the idea of a field trip. A field trip is a school-sponsored event, they are at school, so that does count. So again, the early formula was 10% of the school days, which was 18, and then they went a little step further and they decided that we were going to have a subgroup. So if 10% of your students had 10% of absences, then that was going to be a problem. Loosely equated, it was kind of like AYP for attendance. So obviously I came back, pulled some data, and look, that red line that you see there shows where our 10% mark is, and we really look pretty good as a district. Our shape of our data is very similar to what our national data looks like. You know, we have a little bit of a spike in kindergarten, which absolutely I love being an elementary principal because that's just a perception issue that we can fix real quick. It's not babysitting, they're learning there. It's important that they're there. And as you get to the older grades, it gets a little bit harder to contain a student that is mobile. So we were looking pretty good, but then we had a rule change. So if y'all I'm a soccer fan, a football fan, Ms. Bowman, you'll appreciate that. They changed it to 15 days, no longer a percentage. Well, the 15 days equates to 8.33% of school days. So they put a shorter measuring stick on us. And they also changed it to apply to all subgroups. Again, I panicked, I come back, let's look at our data. Using the same measuring stick, we have a little bit of an issue, plus we're creeping up into an area. Now, keeping in mind that 10% doesn't necessarily apply anymore because it is every student, but again, let's compare apples to apples so at least see where we are. So here we are. This is part of our report card. So I kind of showed you what our data has looked like. This is the reason and a rationale as far as why we're in this corner. It is 10% of our school district's report card, and our school's report card is measured by chronic absenteeism. Way back in the day, we used to talk about average daily attendance. Well, when they look at chronic absenteeism, you can have really good average daily attendance, but you can have pockets of people missing lots and lots of days. So that's kind of why they're shifting towards this chronic absenteeism. So it's 10% of our report cards, so that's an issue. When we look at that top graphic that says the 9.77, that's what our school system looks like. So we're looking decent. We're looking decent. In the graphic below, the 9.59 is one of our middle schools, just to kind of show what we're looking like across the board. So we're in decent shape, but if you think about it, we've got 9 parent notes per semester, which equals 18, and chronic absenteeism is now 15, so we're giving all of our students chronic absenteeism. So that's not a healthy thing to do. So we put together a committee. If you look at our committee, I think you'll see an equal amount of bleed that is jag blue and an equal amount of bleed that is buck orange. So, and we also had an HPTC representative there as well. And student services was involved. When we looked at this, as we went through conversations, looking what other school districts around us were doing, trying to figure out how we were going to be kind of fall within compliance with this, the recommendation from the committee was 9 parent notes per year. So that's a shift, right? We had 9 per semester. We could not find any rationale as to why it was measured by semester. So most everybody's shifting to by year. So that's what we're doing as well. So 9 parent notes per year. There's a little bit of cringing because that's half. But when we take the idea of chronic absenteeism, that also includes doctor's notes. It includes any time they're out. So we have to kind of figure out a way that we're going to be able to do this. Now, because we're recommending this change, because that was a recommendation of the committee, and because it's a change, we're going to need to do a public relations campaign. This is huge. And putting a little slide rule during online registration is not it. So Jason Gass and I, we have been talking. Committee had some good suggestions as how we could go ahead and best approach this, going beyond utilizing school means. Okay. We also want to continue with our following practices with the written notes, having a signature, excuses being turned in within 3 days, whether that's a doctor's note or a parent note, that's already in policy. And the other piece that they asked for, that the committee asked for, was if we could review our anticipated absence form. The idea behind the anticipated absence form is that is for some reason a family is going to be out of school. They kind of let the school know, and they kind of come up with an agreement. So those could be excused absences. So that's something that we're looking at. That's more of a procedure, but that's, I'm sure as you field questions from public, they're going to say, well, what are they going to do about the prearranged absence form or the anticipated absence form? We're addressing that, and that's kind of coming, and we're going to be talking a little bit more about that. But in a nutshell, we're doing this because chronic absenteeism is defined by any time a child is not there. And at this moment in time, it is 15 days, and we allow 18 days per school year. That's not even talking about doctor's notes. So, are there any questions?
I have a question, it's kind of personal if you want to get technical. I have a child and I love her so much. But when I send a note with her, sometimes I find it a month later in her binder. Oops. More than once. Is that something that a parent can email in?
That's a really good question. That's something that I think we're going to be talking about with the principals. But one of the suggestions is the big piece is the signature on the note. And there are a couple of ways that can be obtained by the school. What we don't want to do, we don't want to promote doing an end run around the child, because if I've got a kindergartner, I want them to graduate, that means I'm going to be taking notes to the school for 12 years. I don't really want to do that. But being able to inspect what we expect out of the kids. So we're going to talk about some ways that can happen. The other piece is the iNow home portal has been turned on for attendance for elementary all the way to high school. So if you sent the note in tonight, you can go look on that home portal and see, did it get in? So you're kind of checking.
Which is a lot better than, because I mean, who's going to say that a teenager is not going to email, hey, this is, I get that. So that's better. That's a good idea.
Thank you.
From a 30,000 foot view, if this is 10% of our report card, if this number is not good, what does that mean for the district?
Well, all of those percentages, academic gains, and all of those percentages go into giving us that grade. Right. And I believe as a district we were 92 with an A. That's right. Yes. This past year. So if we can do better with our chronic absenteeism, that number will go up. If we do poorly, then that number could go down. When I did a study of all the other schools in the local area, we were really in the thick of things, even on the higher end of in the thick of things. So,
I mean, do we get a call from the new state superintendent saying that your attendance bad? Do we get fined? What happens?
Get an ugly report card which goes public.
We got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
And minus this 10%, the best you can do is a score of 80 if you get all your other points, right? So it's that 10% could keep us from an A category.
Got it.
And you're not likely to get all the points in all the other areas. So this 10% is critical to us. And obviously the best learning occurs when the children are sitting in the seat and getting the instructions. So we just really don't want to have anything designed that's allowing children to be too many days away from school, and it just has to be tightened up. It's another reason why a 2-year calendar is important to us, because it allows us to go ahead and let parents know when is school starting, when are our breaks. So for those parents who are anticipating some absences because of family time or vacations, they have an opportunity to look out a little bit ahead of themselves. And I think that's a reason why we should always try to keep a proposed 2-year calendar. Can always be adjusted by you. At least have a framework for parents to work from.
How do partial days factor into this?
the law requires the child's in school for at least 50% of the day.
Okay.
So as long as they're there 50%, if they were there for 52% of the day, it would look as they had a tardy. Yeah, they would have a tardy, it would not be an all absence.
That doesn't change with the way you've defined it now.
Correct.
That doesn't change.
And that is 52% of their day? You understand what I'm, we've had this conversation before. High schooler who goes 1st through 4th only, is it 50% of their day?
It's 50% of the school day, at that
Their
school,
school day.
that they are at. So the high school schedule is gonna look different from an elementary schedule
Sure.
because of different start and stop times. So each school would be able to calculate what that
Not
number
each
is.
student, each school.
That's what I'm saying, for
Yes.
those who have high schoolers,
Okay.
that their day only goes to 11:30.
But that's just for a senior though.
Uh,
Wouldn't that just be
That-
really for a senior?
You're talking about a program change, a program, if I'm understanding correctly. So that would be different, but I will check into
If that student's there for 2 of the 4 periods, is that student there or not? Good question, we don't know.
That is a good question, let me
We're
check.
gonna
on
work
that.
Well, I know we had, and then the other thing is we've got a lot of virtual classes.
Yeah.
Those would be considered, part of their day, wherever they are.
Virtual students are considered present,
Right,
yes. So,
I know, I'm sorry.
no, it's good, that's a really good question, I'd rather learn on the front end than on the back end.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
C is a request from me to you for us to have a board retreat. I would love to have some time with you so that we can talk about direction. Who are we, where are we headed? Philosophically, where are we? What are the goals and objectives for this board, for your superintendent? I follow directions fairly well, so if you'll give me some guidance and some leadership and support and the kinds of things that you want us to be focused on, we'll get our focus on. So I really need your time. I need to have some sit-down time so that we can talk together and share together. I took liberty to contact, Louise contacted AASB, and there are 3 dates in July that I want to propose to you, July the 5th, the 19th, or the 26th. We don't have to make that call tonight unless you just happen to, we do?
No, you don't.
Okay. But if you would look at your calendars, 5th, 19th, or 26th, would propose we go to Montgomery to the Alabama Association of School Board building. They have a terrific new building, and we would have an opportunity to meet there. This is not a private meeting. The public's invited. It's just an opportunity for us to sit and walk and talk together and work through who we are and where we're headed. And I really would appreciate that, and I need it from you if you would consider that. The D, I wanted to just mention mental health and Hoover Rise. Ms. Baumann shared with you last board meeting about Hoover Rise. There are 5 areas, and misplaced my sheet for those 5 areas, I'm so sorry. There are 5 pillars that were shared with you by Ms. Baumann at our last board meeting, and those are about mentoring and talking books, about transitioning new families into our community or into our schools, tutoring, the spirit closet. There were several really good ideas. Again, Deanna's been working with the committee, just looking at ways that we support children and support families and those even new coming into us and those who do not have, for example, spirit wear. And so we're appreciative of that. We've thought about ways that that group can also work with mental health. And we've had lots of conversations about mental health with you and our needs. And so I'm giving some consideration to looking at how we support these 2 pieces. How do we support the 5 areas that we've outlined and also continue to support mental health. Anna Whitney gave us a quick presentation when we were at Spain Park last board meeting about mental health, and so it's likely that I'm going to come forward and ask you to allow us to contract with someone to help us do this work. I hope what you know is that my staff and schools and my principals can offer testimonials. We're really working on the skinny. So for me to look at someone currently in the district and go, hey, I want you to grab these additional pieces of the work now. I know you're already busy and I need you to take more. I'm not comfortable with. And so I am likely to ask you soon about being able to offer a contract. The board policy allows me to contract with an individual for not more than $15,000 without your permission. But I'd much rather us talk about the need for this and that we all agree this is a good direction. So I just wanted to share with you mental health, some of the projects that we as a board are wanting to initiate, and how we might support that with a contract of probably nothing to exceed $15,000 is my best guess, just throwing out an amount to you at this point. So kind of a heads up that we might head in that direction in short order. Any thoughts about either the board retreat and or this item?
Would the retreat be one day?
Yes, I don't think there's a need for us to do overnights and that kind of thing, just to go drive down to Montgomery, have a day. I think Jane would cook for us, is what I heard.
That's not gonna happen.
Not happening. No, I don't see a reason for that to be an overnight, just a day event for us.
I think it's a great idea. I mean, we're limited how much we can talk. We get occasion, you're always available for us to talk to you, but there's not really a time we can sit and hash things out and look at opportunities. So I think it's a great idea.
I think it's also a good time for you as a board, and certainly this may or may not be the time, but it would be a time you could consider just a self-assessment. Our board policy talks about the board assessing itself annually. A retreat would allow you an opportunity to do that. So you could, so to speak, kill several birds with one stone. So supporting our direction, thinking about where you are as a board and your service to our children and our community, I think would be another thing we could do.
And ASB makes their beautiful building available to us in no charge. It is very nice. It's 1 block from the State House. So when we go down there on occasion to meet with them in training or we go to the legislature session, free parking. And this is a very nice conference room, brand new building. So thank you for that. But, this would save us a lot of money from going on site. Yeah.
And lastly, I wanted to talk about IT Academy and the Education Academy. We've had lots of angst in our community about these 2 programs, and so I just want to offer, and I may refer to Ron a bit, but let's talk the Information Technology Academy first. We have historically had declining enrollment in that program. There's a large rate of attrition that happens from year 1 to year 2. So even when students start with us, they are not staying in the IT Academy with us and seeing that program all the way through. Our teachers are trained as business educators, and we're really seeing a need to move that program more in the direction of business education or information technology. We are wanting to start a little different angle at our River Chase Career Connection Center, which again opens in 2019. The program is really now being designed with IT in mind, making sure that we're looking at coding, network administration. These are the things that our business and industry people are telling us they need our students to come out of IT with. So the cyber bullying, cyber security training piece, those are the things we're hearing we need. And so this is an opportunity for us to begin to transition this program into something that better meets the needs of business and industry. We've shared with you the numbers you see for Hoover High School and for Spain Park. We took a look at 2017-18 numbers compared to 2018-19, and you can see that we're losing enrollment in those programs. You'll see at Spain Park, for example, for 18-19, those numbers are significantly down, as in some cases, classes with 0 students. And we want to offer children what they want. We want to offer what they need and what's going to make them marketable, what gets them ready for college, what gets them ready for a job. But we simply can't sustain programs that our students aren't signing up for and wanting to be in. We talked last year with our IT teachers about maybe a redesign. Their training isn't in the areas that we're looking to do some of the redesign. So this is nothing negative to them or their abilities to teach or the terrific things they've done in the past. Just as technology changes over time, programs change over time. And this is a change that we need to make as it relates to our students. The Education Academy, certainly it makes us sad to lose any of our academies. We're an education institution. We would love to be filling the Education Academy. But again, we've had declining enrollment in the Education Academy. We think one of the things that's happening here is that the peer helping program is competing with the Education Academy. So we've designed 2 really good things. The problem with the 2 good things is that they're now competing against each other. The peer helping program seems to be doing quite well with student interest. The Education Academy isn't. And so again, we're sensitive to where many of our families are, where some of our children are. Both of our high schools are looking at ways that they can accommodate and facilitate and support the children who are already in these programs who need, such as being seniors who need to finish up any courses. Don't let me misspeak. I know I have Mr. G in the back and Ron. Don't let me misrepresent anything, but we're sensitive to making sure that we support those students who are particularly in that senior year and making sure that we don't leave them hanging without the credentials that they're going to need. It's always tough when programs change. And it's always tough when you've had programs that's been really terrific and they've really been popular, but with time, kids change and programs change. And I really feel like that's where we are. I think it's that simple. I don't want anybody to think that we don't believe those programs are good. I don't want anybody to think we don't believe those teachers are worthy. It's none of that. And I certainly am prepared to answer any questions that you may have or maybe our public has, and Ron's prepared to answer those for us should you have those questions. But that's where we are with IT and education academies. You see the numbers and the declining enrollment.
Dr. Murphy, if I could just add, I think it's a mark of quality in our high schools that we allow our students to vote with their feet when it comes to these kind of things, and we consider the viability of these programs as we have to look at that, and that's something that's reviewed, and these are not knee-jerk reactions. I'm reminded of just a few years ago when we started the Mandarin program and ended it after just 1 year because we realized we were going into a recession and teacher cuts and everything else. But you know, these are hard things. Whenever you start something new, you try to commit to carrying it through, but we also have to realize when things need to change. And I do think we can do the information technology program in a better way with a fresh start.
And Dr. Dawson, you told me last week, as I had someone call, that with the IT, it's not like you're gonna have a gap of a year where you've got those kids. We still have continuing education for them, just maybe not named the same course in the same structure. Is that correct?
Correct. Computer science principles, AP computer science, there's still plenty of opportunities for those students to continue along that thread. That would be very useful to them.
That concludes.
Is that, I'm sorry, similar for like the Education Academy, will there be spots for, maybe for those kids in the peer helper, peer program? I mean, I don't know.
The peer program is strong. That's the program that our students are gravitating to. The Education Academy will need either a redesign or, unfortunately, we're just seeing this huge decline in people going into education.
Colleges are seeing the same. Some colleges are having to close their undergraduate education programs because they don't have enough student enrollment anymore.
It's frightening. I serve on the board for, or the education board for a couple of our colleges, and we're constantly watching and monitoring the number of students coming into education and the number who actually got on the other side with degrees, and it's exceptionally alarming what we're seeing in terms of the decrease in individuals coming into education.
I have a question. Is there an Amazon effect to that, meaning that we can go to school online in virtual classrooms, so we don't need people to graduate with college degrees in education anymore?
I certainly think we need people graduating with education degrees, whether they're getting that in a blended fashion. What we're seeing is that people aren't going to college and going into education areas. I could give you some reasons why. One's a study I read today from the Brooklyn study, where for teachers right now, their salaries are exactly where they were 10 years ago when you consider inflation. So teachers aren't making financial progress in the area. The litigious society that we live in, the safety issues before us, we could just. Here we go.
Law school attendance is going down too.
But it's a real thing that's happening to us, and it's really frightening.
Okay.
We'll arm wrestle later.
I think most of the people that, Mary, you can back me up on this, but I think we've seen a real shift in people coming to us or coming primarily from other careers, going through fifth-year programs. That used to be a high school thing, and now it's elementary, middle school as well.
Absolutely. That concludes for me.
I'd like to just mention something briefly. The Hoover Historical Society is a very valuable asset here in the city of Hoover. It's not a board of education function, but it's important to students, everyone that lives here. The Historical Society has had a historic cabin, an era-type cabin, and some supporting structures just north of Bluff Park Elementary School since 1997. If you haven't been out there, and there's some pictures up here, I guess you got a big one. You can see those are actually taken. I took those pictures, and that's looking basically to the north, away from the school. You see a cabin there, and now the metal shed's not part of it. There's a cabin, there's a couple other structures on the north side of it. It sits on like a third of an acre. So this is an 1850s, 1860s building that was put back together in that location log by log. So Mr. Singer, who's president, Dr. Hickman's here, with the Historical Society. Here's some children. I believe November, Mr. Singer, when did you tell me?
November 12th, that was 120 first grade children from the Bluff Park Elementary School.
So when it's possible, children are invited to come see it, see era-type clothing, artists that may attend there. So there's no utilities there, so there's a limited amount of what they can do, but it's just keeping the history, keeping knowledge of the Historical Society going here. This has nothing to do with the Historical Society's business operations, which I understand are being moved from Bluff Park to the Operations Center. This is a building that's coordinated by the Historical Society, in many cases for our children. I understand adults can come see that also, but the Historical Society has requested that the Hoover Board of Education consider offering a lease to the city of Hoover to allow the property to continue to be used for educational purposes directly related to the Historical Society. The Folklore Center is dedicated to the idea that school children see demonstrations and hear explanations of the mid-1800s lifestyles of early Alabama by costume members and artists. State law does not permit us to lease a building straight to an entity, nonprofit, profit, whatever, and I'm going by legal advice here. Leasing it to the city of Hoover would be legal for us to do so, designating the purposes for education, not restricting it to our students only, but for the overall good of the community in our area. So I think it would be very important. If the board, upon investigation, agrees, I'd like to recommend that we come back at another meeting and offer up maybe a lease to the city of Hoover for $1 a year, or whatever the legal term would be, where these buildings could continue to sit there. It's about 1/3 of an acre. Any of you know that's 14,000 square feet. It's not much. And I also got the page 1 of 1, so I'll just speak my memory. We'd have to get attorneys involved. The first consideration of all would be taking care of our students. Make sure that it's safe. SROs, principals, superintendent would have to be in charge to make sure that the environment stays safe for our children, which means we'd have to be evaluated to make sure that vehicles, our children are kept separated when needed for safety reasons. Any expenses that would be incurred by the city, or if they choose, pass it on to the Historical Society. So this should be a zero cost to the district, but a great asset for us to continue. So if board, I'd like to bring this back to you at some point and see if we can get on the agenda to consider this type of lease, a little bit of work to be done. And of course, we have to approve any kind of agreement we went with. But Mr. Singer, thank you for your patience. This is something we've talked about for a while. Dr. Hickman has certainly offered up good information and resources for me. So I think all of us ought to appreciate our history, and especially that's a treasure we have sitting on a very small piece of land on one of our school partners. Thank you for listening. Okay. Anything else? We're adjourned. Thank you for coming.
When the next meeting, Fred?
July 2nd. I'm sorry. Our next meeting is July 2nd. Thank you. That's why I got
Stop.